I'm in a good mood because God's in a good mood. Yeah. I woke up today and he's happy. So I'm happy. That's a beautiful day, isn't it? We might get some rain later today, but that'll just be good Sunday afternoon nap weather. I don't get many naps, so when it's raining on Sunday afternoon, that's just a great excuse for me just to kind of nuzzle in there in the couch and take a good nap. But anyway, it's some good stuff, and you guys need to consider that URSSM. I'm going to be personally helping lead that every week, and it's going to be amazing. So I get to travel out about once a month is what I kind of limit that to, preaching out all over the region, Midwest mostly, and so sometimes I try to even do it on a Sunday night and go to another school or another church, and so it's cool. So you'll actually be on the traveling team, and the gas is going to be provided in one of the church vans. So you get to actually activate. That was one of the things last year when we had a school. There was room for little activation. They were doing it on Monday nights, sometimes on Sundays for altar ministry and ministry time, but now actually hands-on application. And what this is hoping to do is propel you into a supernatural lifestyle of ministry. Not where you just do it in the church. The goal is that you're transforming lives around you in whatever sphere of influence you're in. Whether it's at your workplace, your home, the grocery, the restaurants you visit, whatever. That's the goal. The goal is that we are leading people into the goodness of God, right? That's our heart, that we have an encounter with Jesus so powerful that it transforms us, and we want to lead others into an encounter with Jesus to transform them, to transform the world, right? We are influencers by influencing influencers, right? You wrap your mind around that, clear as mud? Hey, we're starting week 2 here in a series called Simple Life in Jesus, or Simply a Life in Jesus. I don't know if we have the graphic for that or not yet, but we'll get it next week on the final week, okay? But I think it might be on the computer screen. But anyway, just to kind of recap last week, and this week I promise I have the right verses. All right, we were all over the place last week. If you were here, you know, I was like, Matthew 7, and we're like, well, it must be Mark 7. I must have wrote down the wrong thing. And then we get to Mark, and I get home, and it was actually Luke 7. So we were all over the place. We turned to a verse that didn't even exist. I'm like, wow, it only goes to verse 30, and we need 37. So, and then I politely blamed my wife and just put all the blame on her. But the reality is, I was just probably goofing off through the week and didn't put enough time into the message. But God just birthed this series in me last Saturday, so didn't have much time to prepare. Thanks, God. But anyway, here we go. I'm actually going to go right to that verse again. But let me just recap and tell you where this series is birthed from. Around Christmas time, I did a series called Simply Jesus. And that's what it was called, just Simply Jesus. I think sometimes we complicate things, we make things really complicated, and we try to get processes involved, and we try to get programs involved, when really what happens in a church, what happens in a community, what happens in our home, if we just plant Jesus and build everything around that. What would that look like if we literally just planted Jesus and we don't necessarily, not that we're not, there's order, right? God says there is order, but what if we just plant Jesus in our church, in upper room? What if we just plant him right here in the center of our ministry, in the center of our church, and then let him just transform the community by us just focusing on him? The gospel's simple. It's the good news of Christ. It's the good news of what he did. It's not complicated. It's not my little kids, my 4 little girls. Oh boy, I hope that wasn't prophetic. 4's enough, okay? 4 girls is enough. But what if, if they can grasp the simple message, anybody can grab it. If my 4-year-old can grab the simple message of Jesus, then everybody around us can. Now here's the beautiful thing is that Jesus is so divine and so awesome. He's still complex to where the greatest scholars and the greatest elite with the most wisdom can still be challenged and still not understand all of the mysteries of God. A couple weeks ago, they announced, and it was in the newspaper I saw. I was in Florida, and I saw the newspaper, and it said they found another planet. And that just intrigues me, because the galaxy intrigues me, because if we are still, with just the technology increasing, finding new planets, being able to see further, go further, do more, how big is God? To where we still can't see the end of the galaxy. We still, with the technology we have, I have a phone here that can do almost anything I need it to, right here. But yet they're still finding new planets because they can't see that far. That's how big God is. So I did this series on Simply Jesus. So I just felt like last Saturday I was just praying and just hanging out with my daughters, or they were in the pool, and I'm just reading my Bible out on the back porch. And I'm like, well, what about who are we in Him? You know? We try to be these big people and these big titles and all these big roles and responsibilities. What about just simply being believers? What about simply just being sons and daughters with a great big daddy? What about if we just simplify who we are in Him, and it's not this complex thing? Again, it's simple. So I just came up, God just showed me 3 things. The first one is surrender. And that was last week. And man, what a beautiful sight seeing everybody up front here with the tissues and the white flags just waving in surrender. That was just a beautiful picture. I got it on video, and I went home that day and I watched that and I just wept. Because I believe we're living in a time right now in this church is surrender. And we're just surrendering our service to Him. We went extra long last week in service, but we really didn't care because it's not about a schedule, it's not about a tip, it's not about an agenda, it's not about our will, it's about His. So last week we just laid it down because it's a life of surrender. And I'll tell you this, let's just get right into the message. Because this week we're going to focus on sowing, and next week we're going to focus on serving. Because those are really the 3 things. I just feel that in the surrender is the seeking. You know, I would have added a 4th one called seeking, but I really feel that if we're really surrendered, we're going to want to seek the Father. If we're truly surrendered and we're giving our lives as a living sacrifice, as Romans says, then we're really going to be living a life of seeking Him, seeking His presence, seeking His will, seeking His agenda, seeking His goodness, seeking His power, seeking His manifestations, His giftings, His anointings, His callings. If we're living a life of surrender, we're going to automatically be seeking. And from that is birth sowing and serving. So many of you are like, oh boy, we're going to talk about money today. Actually, it's probably about a 5th of the message today. Because when we sow, it's not just money. It's not just about our finances. He wants us to give ourselves a living sacrifice. Present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Now, presenting my body involves my finances, because when I surrender myself, I surrender everything. I surrender my mind, will, my emotions. I surrender my natural, and obviously my spiritual is Him. It's Christ in me, the hope of glory. So greater is He that is in me than He is in the world. So when I sow, I can sow without fear, because greater is in me than anything else out there. So I can sow from a place of abundance. I'm not living in mammon. I'm not living in lack, because there's no lack in heaven. And my God's grace is sufficient for everything. So when I'm sowing, I'm not ever sowing from where I'm at. I'm sowing from where I want to be.
Come on. Yeah.
I'm extravagant. I'm an extravagant giver. My wife and I, she's converted me. Okay, I used to be the guy, when we first got married, like we're working out this budget thing, and we're working out this thing, and I was raised to tithe. But when we first got married, I necessarily wasn't a believer. So now she's telling me I got to give 10% of my money, and like there's actually going to be accountability to that, and she's going to know if it's 10% or not. And she's like, well, we got to give 10%. I'm like, all right. I was like, I don't know what it was back then in a week. I said, okay, how about we give $201.07. That's 10% this week. 201 with 7 cents. She's like, that's crazy. We'll give $2.50. I'm like, well, that's nuts. That's not 10%. That's like 11.32%. What are you talking about? So that was where my heart was. And I'm telling you what, we have been amped that up, and we are just extravagant givers. And I'll tell you this, we have never been without lack since I transitioned over to knowing that the key to prosperity is generosity. Not every day's been pretty. There's been some times we're watching that bank account. All right, is my check getting deposited in time where our house payment's coming out? Right? How many's been there? But there's never been a time where we went without food. There's never been a time where we've fretted over the last 8 years about finances. Why? Because we surrendered our lives. We surrendered our children's lives. We surrendered our home. We've surrendered our money, our time, our talents, our treasures. We have given it all to Him. And we literally put it at the feet of Jesus and said, God, it's yours.
Amen.
Last week I talked about, or maybe it was through the week to somebody, I do not stress about the church finances. I do not get in fear about it. I do not worry about it. I'm not concerned about it. If anything, I should probably look at a report every once in a while. They text me the weekly deposit, and that's fine enough with me. The total amount. And I'm just saying, I should probably have a little bit more organization, but I'm like the least business meeting kind of person you'll ever meet. But we're creating some things here to not go organization, but still be in a movement.
Amen.
Can we just elaborate on that a little bit? I think every cool denomination and everything that's happened that's been birthed, even in America, the Azusa Street Revival, those things, they're being birthed out of passion and a movement of the presence of God. Out of the power, the fire, the manifestations of the Holy Ghost. But what happens is then man gets a hold of it, finances start to get consumed, and then all these things start to happen, and a movement quickly turns into an organization where we're having more business meetings than we're having prayer meetings.
Amen.
I refuse to have more business meetings, planning meetings, strategy meetings than I'm having prayer meetings. I just refuse. Why? Because I gave this church to God. When we took over this building, we actually came into a mortgage payment. We're like, whoa, what's that? We've not had that for like 12 years. When we came into a mortgage payment, I stepped into a pastor for the very first time ever. We're taking over the church and as senior leaders. Now we have a $5,000 a month mortgage payment. We're like, whoa. My theory on that is this. If God wants this church to exist, He's going to supply every need here. If not, if he doesn't want it here, I don't want to be a part of it.
That's right. Hallelujah.
I'm just being super transparent. But I have enough faith that my personal finances are a guarantor on this loan because I know He has a plan for this place. There's been prophetic words, there's been confirmations, everything. When we turned this property, when we dug, I spray painted shovels gold.
Yeah.
And when we turned it, we said we will break ground in 2010. That was our goal. Because it was better than perfect vision. All right, 2020 and 2010. So we had this 2010 vision. We said, we are breaking ground on a new property. We are doing this in 2010. So I believe it was December 29th, roughly. Yeah. We go out there. There was snow on the ground. The ground was frozen solid. We didn't have a loan financing us yet. That was when the market had just changed and had just changed over, and the requirements changed. The amount of givers increased. The amount of down payment increased. We had almost $400,000 to put down on this property. We had saved. We had stewarded well. And then all of a sudden, all the banks that had told us yes, and our current bank that we're banking with said no. Wow. So we're like, you know what? We're doing this by faith. My mom and dad started this church on faith, on a second mortgage on their house in the first building we bought. So we're doing this by faith. We are calling after church on Sunday. We are going out to the new property on Hyatt Street, and we're going to turn some dirt, and we're breaking ground.
Praise the Lord.
We did it by faith. So we came out here, we met, we prayed. The builder was out here with us, Dana and some other people and some important people and everybody else who's important people. Came out a little wrong. And we go out there and we dig. And we dig and we turn over this dirt. We've got pictures to prove it. We had no money. We had no loan. We had no financing. That week, we go to the ramp, the winter ramp. I get a phone call from a banker. Her name's Lori. And Lori says, hey, you're getting your loan. Everything we've done has been on faith here. Sometimes you don't need a plan, you need Jesus.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't need just a strategic plan to figure out the next 5 years, and you don't need all this money in the bank to say, well, if no one gives anything for the rest of the year, then we're going to be okay. Sometimes you just need to just take a leap and say, God, it's all yours. We surrender our finances. We surrender our agenda. We surrender everything. It's all yours. So that's what we've done as a church. So you're sitting here right now in a building that was built literally on faith when we had nothing to know if we were moving forward. And within 4 days, we received a call. Your loan is secured. You're going to build. So now, by faith, we're starting these campaigns to get that loan paid off because we don't want to be a slave to anybody else. Right? We want to be sons and daughters. So we're going to get that thing paid off very, very quickly. But man, it's a life of surrender. And I'll say this, that whatever you surrender to, you will always sow in serving.
Yes.
Amen.
I'm going to say that again. That's noteworthy there. Whatever you surrender to, you will always sow in serving.
Praise you, Lord.
Or I could even take it a step further. Whatever you surrender to, you will always serve and sow. I love hunting. I love it. I have 4 daughters at home and a wife, and 5 girls in the house. It's a little challenging at times. 5 girls is, let's just say, a little dramatic, a little loud. There's at times where I'm just kind of doing a little twitch. especially this weekend, we had a wedding. My brother-in-law, my wife's littlest brother. I met him when my wife and I were dating. He was 5 years old. And one of the first times within a year of me meeting him, they were going to this thing called a live festival, Christian music festival. And he asked me to take care of Fluffy. And I knew it was going to be a great relationship with them when the little boy trusted me with his hamster. His hamster Fluffy. And I took care of Fluffy, and Fluffy lived. And a couple of months later, Fluffy grew into this giant ball about this big, literally a ball. And then Fluffy died. So it wasn't my fault. I wasn't feeding Fluffy Cheerios, Brett was. But here's the deal. This weekend, we were at this wedding, and all 4 of my daughters, even the baby, were considered the flower girls. And I was officiating. My wife is she's kind of an administrative, planner. So, she's in the back telling all of them when to go next. Like the wedding party. Okay, you go next. And she's kind of just helping the family, helping the bride's family and everything. And I tell you what though, yesterday, we're on our way, and we get all the way to Needmore Road. The wedding was in Dayton, and we had to be there for some pictures beforehand. And she had put our baby, in the car seat with just a diaper on because she didn't want Hadassah to blow out and make the white dress green or yellow. Okay, let's just say that. So we go down there, and we get to, Needmore Road, and she realizes, the whole time we're driving, she's like, just feels like I'm forgetting something. I just don't know what. I was like, baby, as long as Britt and Rachel are there and I'm there, we're going to seal the deal, and it's going to work, okay? I'll write the paper, we'll do this. It doesn't matter. I forgot the dress. Hadassah's dress is hanging in the laundry room. So here we're driving out. Hadassah's in a diaper, and Chloe's like, oh, she'll be okay. Chloe, she's a soother, she's a comforter, and she's a nurturer. And she's like, she doesn't need a dress, Mommy. It's going to be okay. I was like, we'll turn around. So then, Nicole's crying. She's like, ah! And then all the girls are, ah! And I'm like, hey, this is supposed to be a day of love. This is supposed to be a good day, a fun day, a celebration. And the girls do not need to remember this day as chaos of Britt's wedding. So, we're having one of those times. And so, to say the least, it's interesting to have this many girls as a family, at least in here knows that, because I have 4 girls and a son. But I'll say this, so the point of all that was to say, I love to hunt. In the summer, I tend to be too busy to go fish. But in the winter, there's a little less to do. So I find myself disappearing for about 4 hours at a time in a tree stand with silence. I was just listening to some of my voice recordings in my phone this week, and it's like birds chirping. So I just listened to it. I was like, oh, and the guys were in a hunting group text, and they're already flowing stuff in. Guys are putting out cameras, and I'm loving it. But that is my alone time. All right, so with all this chaos going around, I hunt. But here's the deal. If I'm surrendered to hunting, I'm going to serve hunting, and I'm going to sow into hunting. A deer stand costs $300. A bow and arrow set costs about $700. License are $30 or $40 every year, and all these things, right? To get about $300 worth of meat. It doesn't add up. I'm just sorry, hunters. But we are providing bounty for our family. That's why we hunt. Okay? We hunt because we're putting meat on the table. Yes, my freezer's full of meat. Because we are men and we eat meat. No offense to all the vegans and vegetarians out there. We love you too. You're just missing out on some of the finer things in life. But anyway, here's the deal. But I can easily turn golf, turn working out, turn hunting, turn fishing, turn anything, turn my promotion at work, my business. I can easily surrender to that and serve and sow into that. Hobbies are expensive, and we tend to, wherever our heart is, there our treasures are going to be. So whatever we're serving, whatever we're sowing to, really that's what we're surrendered to. But when we surrender to a life of Christ, now all of a sudden it's very easy to serve Him and serve His people. And it's very easy to sow into what He's doing. Listen, when you give money to the church, it's not for a fancy building.
Amen. Come on.
We are in an amazing building because many of us spent hundreds, if not thousands, literally thousands of hours in here with our hand, bleeding, breaking bones. And what you see here, we were giving this room as a shell. And we're up here on lifts. I was literally standing on some of those beams off of the lift, putting that cross up there. We were screwing in every single light you see in here, every stone that you see in this building. The men and some of the ladies even helped of this church put every stone on this building. The sign outside, we built that ourselves. Listen, when you sow into a church, you are not sowing into a building. You're sowing into God's kingdom, trusting that where you're going is actually stewarding it for His kingdom. It's hard for us to get past saying, well, we're just giving to that church so the pastor can drive a nicer car. Who cares if he gets a nice car? Who cares if I get a nice car? Good, you should celebrate with me. Amen. You should celebrate that I'm stewarding my personal finances as well, that I can be successful. If you trust me, then you want me to be successful. If you trust your brothers and sisters in here, you're going to celebrate when they get a nicer house than you. And that's okay, as long as we're stewarding well. But here's the problem. We get this mindset that we're sowing into a person or we're sowing into a building rather than sowing into a king.
Come on.
When we sow our time, when we sow our treasure, when we sow our talent, we are not sowing into a person. We're sowing into the man.
Yeah.
We're sowing into His kingdom. We're sowing into His people through Him.
Amen.
Listen, I said this last week. You're not my people. You're not my church. You are God's church, and He's allowing me to steward, just leading you, and hopefully, giving passion to you and birthing, just motivating you and propelling you and launching you and elevating you to do what God's called you and commissioned you to do. But you're not my people. I don't own you. There's not an ownership here. You are God's people. You are God's sons and daughters, not mine. He's entrusted me with stuff. Just like your finances, your time, it's not yours.
Come on.
It is not yours. Nothing. Your promotion, your position at work, none of it. Nothing in this earth is yours. Nothing. He's giving you 100% of everything. And the only thing He's asking for in your finances is 10% back.
Amen.
Why? Because He wants you to have a choice to sow or not to sow. We're going to get into this. Here's the real deal. He will do way more with His 90 through you than you would ever do with your 100 without Him.
Amen.
Way more. Way more. And I'm talking about time, I'm talking about talent, and I'm talking about treasure. I'm not just talking about money. I'm not just talking about money. Money's going to come. Guess what? Money's going to come. Why? Because I have faith to know if God wants it here, it's going to stay here. If God wants us to transform the community, He's going to give us the resources to transform the community. I had a friend just tell me this awesome story. He's from Defiance, Ohio. Just been in the ministry 30, 40 years, and I just felt like God told me to call him and just say hi to see how he's doing. He just told me that their church is located next to a railroad, and through the night one night, the railroad tipped over, or something happened where it dumped 5,000 gallons of diesel fuel into their church lot. So the EPA and everybody had to come clean it up, and they're like, "Oh, we should be done in a couple weeks, and we're going to use your parking lot, but we'll be done." And what happened was several months, I think he said like 9 months later, they finally get it cleaned up. They finally get their parking lot and their property back, and they can finally not have heavy equipment operating every day there. But he said to me, what the enemy means for destruction, God will use for good. He's like, it was a great blessing. He said they actually tore up a parking lot that was already torn up and nasty and needing replaced. They replaced it in full with a better parking lot. Then they gave them a slew of money for their inconvenience and all the time and renting their property to use for the cleanup. So they ended up with this crazy resource, this crazy financial blessing that's allowing them to paint their church, fix up some things, do some projects that they've been putting off, and they got their parking lot replaced. That's God. That's God. Why? Because Tim has turned his church over to him and said, this is yours. If you need financial breakthrough, God, you're going to make it happen. Listen, we all play a part in that. But it doesn't solely rest on you. We're a family. And a family is going to serve together. A family is going to sow together. Let's get into this message now. That was a great intro, though, wasn't it? Just getting warmed up. So here we go. I just want to read a verse that I was supposed to read last week. Luke. Everybody say Luke. Luke 7:37. Luke 7:37. And we're going to go somewhat through 50. But we'll see. We might pause and start again here in a minute. Jesus anointed by a sinful woman. In 37 it says this, when a certain immoral woman from the city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with the expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. When the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner. The guy's first problem is he's only seeing Jesus as a prophet.
Right.
Amen.
Just saying. Verse 40, then Jesus answered his thoughts. Isn't that amazing? Last week I said being transparent is part of being surrendered. A surrendered life is a humbled life, and it's a transparent life, being real with who you really are. I can be real with you up here because I know who I am and I know who God is in me.
Amen.
Okay? And part of that's being real with God.
Yes.
He knows your thoughts, He knows your heart, so you might as well just be real with Him and have some heart-to-hearts.
Amen.
He says, Jesus answered his thoughts. This guy didn't say it out loud, he was just thinking it, and Jesus answered his thoughts and said, Simon, he said to the Pharisee, I have something to say to you. Go ahead, teacher, Simon replied. Then Jesus told him the story. A man loaned money to two people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 pieces of to the other. But neither of them could repay him, so he kindly forgave them both, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? Simon answered, I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt. That's right, Jesus said. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, and he goes through, she anointed me with oil. She did all this stuff. She recognized who I was. She did these things, but you did none of them. Then we go on to verse 47. I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven, so she's shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven little shows only little love. Then Jesus said to the woman, your sins are forgiven. The men at the table said among them, who is this man that goes around forgiving sins? And Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Last week I had mentioned, it's not about who you are. It's not about where you've been. It's about who He is.
Yes.
Your surrender is not where you are. Your surrender is not about who you are. Your surrender is about who He is. You're surrendering to a Messiah, not a prophet. You're surrendering to a Savior, not a teacher.
Yeah.
That's the problem. They couldn't see past that He was a prophet and a teacher and actually Messiah.
Yeah.
So here we are to where we're sowing and where we're surrendering and where we're serving. So I find it interesting when he's saying that they gave bigger debt, they gave these things. It's all linked back to money. When we hear about this, and then the other story that I referenced last week was Mark 12, 41 through 44. That was Mark, not Matthew. Okay, that was the other one I messed up last week. That was Mark, not Matthew. But anyway, he's saying that a woman gave everything she had, but a rich man gave all this money, but the widowed woman gave very little. Who gave more? It was a woman who was widowed who gave very little, but gave it all. It was surrendered. I find that funny that it was a reference, it was a parable, it was a story of a woman giving money in the church. Referencing what surrender is, referencing what giving and presenting yourself as a living sacrifice, giving it all, also goes back to money. You know, we look at the talents, and we're looking at these things about the talents. Do you bury them? Do you invest them? Or do you just hold on to them? The parable of the talents. And in Malachi, he's talking about, listen, once we're surrendered, we don't have a choice anymore whether to sow or serve.
Praise.
Hallelujah.
I'm just going to be honest. Whatever you're surrendering to, you're going to serve and sow into. Period. If it's God, that's great. If it's the church, awesome. But if it's not, it is somewhere over here, then it leads to a difficult life.
Come on. Amen.
But once we're surrendered, God says, have you robbed me? In Malachi, he's actually saying, if you've not given your tithes and offering, you've robbed him. He's referencing this. If you don't know it, just look it up in Malachi. He's saying, in what way have you robbed me? In what way have you stolen from me? And he says, tithes and offering.
Hallelujah.
Why? Because they're his. They're not ours.
Amen.
When this mindset changed and it shifted in our home, all of a sudden, our prosperity shifted. When we started sowing into, listen, sowing a seed, let me just get into this. Sowing a seed is always meant to bring life. When you're sowing, it's actually you're planting. A sowing, the reference when we're saying sowing is you're planting seed. You are investing in something. And I want to invest where I want the return.
Amen.
If I'm investing in heaven, I want heaven's returns.
Yeah.
If I'm investing in hunting, I'm only going to get hunting returns.
Yes.
Come on.
And a deer, the couple deer that I'm allowed a year, will only last me for that season. But when I'm investing in the kingdom, it multiplies and lasts for an eternity. Whatever I'm sowing into, whatever I'm planting into, I'm going to get the return on that investment. So when I'm sowing because I want the harvest. Listen, and I'm not just talking about I give so I can get something. I'm saying I live a surrendered life. So in that, it says that I'm an heir. I'm a child where I can cry out, Abba, Father. I'm an heir to the throne of heaven.
Amen.
So anything that's in heaven now, as a child, I have a legal adopted right to. So I'm not living out of lack, and I'm not living out of arrogance, and I'm not living out of pride, and I'm not living out of demand. I'm living out of contentment, but I know who my dad is. And I know the resources he has. And I know that an abundant marriage is in my future.
Yes.
I know that not an empty bank account is in my future. I know that a prosperous life is in my future. Not because I'm materialistic and it's one of these favor messages. I'm saying that because I know my dad is the King of Kings and has all the hills and all the cattle on all the hills.
Amen.
I know who he is and I know who I am in him. I know who I am and I know whose I am. And in that, it allows me to surrender, sow, and serve. Let's carry on here. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 9. 2 Corinthians 9. And we're gonna go probably 6 to 12. And this is going to be NIV. Second Corinthians 9, 6 through 12. It says this. Remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, not because you're pressured into it.
Amen.
For God loves a cheerful giver who's doing it out of the goodness of his heart. That's what it's saying. God loves a cheerful giver. It's not about the amount of your time, treasure, or talent. It's not about the amount. It's about the attitude.
Amen.
God would rather you give little with a great attitude than much with a horrible attitude.
Yeah.
And honestly, quite frankly, we'd rather the same here in the ministry. We'd rather people be giving out of great hearts because we know that money's going to be multiplied. As the offering, I was coming through and just saying some hello to some people, and the offering passed through, and they just prayed over it, and they're walking it out to where they take it, and I laid my hands. I was like, multiply it, Jesus. Just multiply it. We've heard these stories where they've done a money count, and then when they go to deposit it at the bank, it's literally multiplied, sometimes up to 10 times the amount. Out of nowhere. We've heard people that when they open their safe, we've heard churches, they found rubies and diamonds in their safe. How many are open to that?
Amen.
My kids, with little girls, you got all these different things laying around the house, and you'll pick up this little jewel, and I'm like, oh, this could be a diamond. This could be the real thing. And then Nicole's like, no, it's off our necklace. Oh, man. I'm waiting. I'm expecting of that. I'm expecting that sometime when we do the money count, and then when the person goes to deposit at the bank, when they do that, I'm expecting it just to multiply and add zeros to it. How many are good with that? How many are good if Kirk, he told me a story. Kirk is a great giver. Got an amazing heart. If you don't know this man, you need to. Servant's heart who's very generous. And Kirk was telling me his bank made a mistake. They called him and they said, we've made a mistake in your account. And it was thousands of dollars, wasn't it? $7,400. He goes to them, he's like, there's no way you can make a mistake. You may have made a mistake telling me you've made a mistake. He's like, it doesn't show. And they went and they helped him balance his books and do it all out. $7,400 later, they proved that they had made a mistake and that was his money. The key to prosperity is generosity. That's not an accident. That's not by chance. That's because he has surrendered his life, his finances, his time, his talents to Jesus. So going on. Okay. Generously will also reap generously. I don't know where I left off, so we'll just start at 7. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. There we go. 8. And God is able to bless you abundantly so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. If you give generously, you'll never be without, and you'll always have everything you need.
That's right.
Amen.
Wow, that's a pretty good investment. That's a pretty good return on investment. If I give generously to you, God, I'm never going to be with lack. Oh, cool. It doesn't mean we won't have hard times. It doesn't mean that when we were counseling and meeting with my brother-in-law and his future wife, we were saying, marriage is a beautiful thing. It's the greatest thing. It's the greatest relationship on earth that can actually bring heaven to earth and reveal the relationship of Him as the groom, God as the groom, and us as the bride on earth. Amen. It's the greatest relationship. It's beautiful. It's awesome. But it doesn't mean every single day is just full of joy and happiness. And there's some challenging days. I said, but in those challenges, you actually get brought closer together. And there's a point of it. James 1:2 says, count it joy the trials you go through, right? But you'll never be with lack. As it is written, they have freely scattered their gifts to the poor, their righteousness endures forever. Now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest for your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. Last verse. This service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of the Lord's people, but is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God. When we're giving, we're actually showing faith and trust in the Lord. When we're giving, when we're surrendering, we're actually giving thanks to God through our giving. Let's get back here. How many are feeling good? Give your partner a high five. I once heard somebody say, you can tell where somebody's heart is by looking in two areas. Their checkbook and their daily planner. Which nowadays that might be their banking app and their iCal. Two areas. Where your time's going and where your money's going is where your heart is. It boils down to that, really. So where's your heart? Where's that stuff going? If you look at your checkbook, if you look at that stuff, where's it going? Now I understand that my house payment is probably more than what I tithe. But I know this. I give my first fruits and we always tithe first.
Amen.
I said I wasn't going to preach on tithing all that much, so we're just going to stop there. You get the point. If you don't, read Malachi. I believe it's the 4th chapter. Read Malachi 4 if you don't get that. So, the three main areas that I've focused on so far are time, treasure, talent. Where's your time going? Where's your money going? Where's your talent going? How are you serving? What are you using your gifts for? Listen, each of you are uniquely gifted. Each of you are uniquely designed. You are your very own person. There is no one like you. There was no one like our God, and there was no one like you because it's Christ in you, the whole glory. He has made you special. You are your own shade of color of skin. You are your own personality. You are your own color of hair. Some of us losing it faster than others. I almost had a discussion with my hair person this week. I'm almost there. I'm going to ask her, okay, how much longer can I do this? When am I just going to accept that it's moving back and back and back?
That's all right.
Nicole's like, no, don't do it yet. Don't do it. I'm like, well, then you better pray that my youth be renewed like an eagle. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, there's a few other areas that I really want to focus on. And then we'll close this up. We'll wrap this up, and the band can come. A few other areas. The first one is, what are you sowing in worship?
Yeah.
What are you sowing in worship? Nicole touched on it to intro the service, and if you weren't here, if you came in just a little late, you missed out on what does it look like to sow into worship. Again, we're investing in lifting Him up, into giving our time, and presenting ourselves a living sacrifice. What does that mean? He doesn't say a dead sacrifice. Why? Because every seed you sow is meant to bring life. A seed, when it's planted in the ground, is only meant to bring life. It's never meant to bring death. A seed's purpose is to produce life.
Amen.
So when you're sowing, you are only sowing to produce life. So when I'm giving to the church, I am expecting a harvest of return, and that be multiplied, and souls be reached, and lives be transformed, and sinners set free, and the redeemed redeemed.
Right.
That's what I'm expecting, because when I sow a seed of my time, and if I give my time to somebody, if I meet for coffee with somebody, I expect results. Why? Because I'm confident knowing that it's Christ in me, the hope of glory. So when you meet with me, you're hopefully going to meet hope. When I plant a seed with my time, with my treasure, with my talent, when I plant a seed in that, I expect a harvest of life. I expect it to grow into a seed, to grow into a plant, to produce harvest, to produce more fruit and more fruit and more fruit. So when I'm giving myself in worship, I'm expecting my Father to be pleased. And I'm expecting an atmosphere to change. And I'm expecting lives to be transformed. Why? Because worship's contagious. And when I can live a life of worship, it's not dependent on my circumstances. It's not dependent on my feelings. It's not dependent on my emotions. It's dependent on knowing that God is good. Not every day do I feel like waking up and giving God a half hour of worship before I go to work. Not every day do I come in here on a Sunday morning. My wife gets here like 7:30, 8 o'clock nearly, almost every Sunday morning to just create an atmosphere and just to pray and worship Him when no one else is here yet. Every week she does this.
Amen. Praise the Lord.
Last night we didn't get home till like 1 in the morning or something crazy. I don't even know. I know this. I sat on the couch for just a minute and I was out. I was so tired. And I can guarantee you this, when we're laying in bed this morning, our alarms are going off. I know she didn't feel like probably coming here. Just to be honest, just to be real. But my worship and His worship is not dependent on my feelings. It's not dependent on how I feel. It's not dependent on what the circumstances are. It's not dependent on what's happened to me that week. It's not dependent on what's in my bank account. It's not dependent on anything else. But God is good. And God is worthy of worship. He's good. If we can learn a lifestyle of worship, we're going to have a lifestyle of surrender, sowing, and serving. Guaranteed. Why was David so successful? Why was he, in my opinion, the greatest king to ever walk the land? Because he was a man after God's own heart. He understood the value of worship. He lived a lifestyle, not an event, not a Sunday morning, not a Friday night worship, not a Jake Hamilton concert. He lived a lifestyle of worship. And was everything perfect in his life? No. Did David mess up? Yes. He fell. He was the singer, the songwriter of praise, and yet we find him at one point praying for God to return to him the joy of God's salvation. He wasn't perfect, but what did David have that he never lost? He may have lost his praise, but he never lost his worship.
Amen.
Praise is about what God's done. Worship's about who He is.
Yeah.
And if we can live a lifestyle of worship, all of a sudden my bad day doesn't matter. All of a sudden what's happening in my marriage at that moment and that fight and that thing, it doesn't matter. Why? Because I turn my affection to the Creator. I turn my affection to the Father. And all of a sudden, when I'm sowing that seed of worship, He's turning His affection to me. And then I feel better. There's always life in sowing. When we sow into the kingdom and kingdom things, and we always sow into God, there's always a life return. There's always a return of life. Why? Because a seed's always meant to produce life. The next thing is sowing with our words. In Proverbs 18:21, it says that your words are death or life. One of the verses in the Bible says that although a small member of your body, your tongue can produce a forest fire. Right now, there's devastating forest fires happening in California and spreading very quickly. At least at the end of last week. I haven't seen what's happened the last few days. And you know, it's very destructive with homes, and it's very destructive when those things are going on. But if you put that in an organized burn, or if you put that when there's no houses, or before the houses were there, it's actually to produce life. I'm not talking about somebody flipped out a cigarette and started a fire. That's destruction. I'm talking about sometimes fires happen in a controlled burn or in a situation. Then all of a sudden, within a few years later, the life is actually stronger in the grasses and everything that's come up beneath the ashes. Why? Because there's beauty from ashes. And those seeds that are in that ground become stronger when they're burned. When we're put to the fire, we're put to the test, all of a sudden we're stronger and we're purified. When you put gold, dirty gold that's just been mined, when you put that to the fire, all of a sudden it comes out pure, more valuable, stronger, better. When we're put to the fire, when we're put to the test, and we can surrender and sow into a life of worship, all of a sudden we're stronger. But our words, although a small member of our body, our tongue, it can produce a forest fire. And that could be life, or that could be death. And I choose my words to be life, because when I sow my word, I can never take that seed back. I'm just being honest with you. I can always apologize, I can do damage control, but once it's out, I can never get it back. The Bible says so many times that fewer words are better. A gentle word breaks a bone. And all these things, and all of a sudden, especially a lot of us men, we're so flippant. We're so just body to just go. And all of a sudden, we're saying things that we regret. We're saying things we regret. We're saying things that we didn't really mean. But all of a sudden, that seed is planted. That seed's out, and I'm telling you what, every single word that's coming out of your mouth, it's either producing life or it's producing death. And that's your choice where you sow your words. You're either leading to a destruction or you're building up. You're tearing down or you're building up with your words. You're either sowing discord and gossip and all these other things that are over here with tearing down, and it could be as innocent as, well, I just needed somebody to talk to. Well, I just needed this. I'm telling you what, there's one thing that could be the most damaging thing in the church, and that is discord and gossip.
Yes.
If you want to see a church destroyed, it's not by what's happening out there. Somebody out there cannot tear apart our church. It's people in here. It's people here that tear apart the church. It's agendas that say, well, I could preach better than Aaron. Probably most of you could. I'm not going to deny that.
Yes, hallelujah.
But for some reason, I had 4 people asking me this week, well, where'd you go to seminary? I'm like, man, God, are you like trying to get me to go to seminary? I still feel it in my heart.
Come on.
I just tell them, I said, I didn't go to seminary because I didn't want any of this. I'm just going to be open with you right now. I didn't want to be a Christian, let alone be a leader in a church. I didn't want this. I believe it was Stephen and Philip, 2 men in the Bible in the New Testament. They said they weren't educated men. Maybe it was Simon. They weren't educated men, but they had known they had been with Jesus. I have a degree in church organization or organizational leadership. I have a degree in that. I have an education. I see the value in it. But everything I'm doing is being birthed out of passion and surrender. Everything I'm doing, I'm not a theologian. I'm not educated. But guess what? I've been with Jesus. I've surrendered to Jesus. So you have a man up here that's not a seminary, that's not a theologian or any of that, but I've been with Jesus. I've surrendered my life. I've walked through some nasty places. I was an alcoholic, addicted to pornography. I've been in these places. I was an abusive husband, but I've been with Jesus. But God. Why? Because I've turned my affection to Him and I've experienced Him. I've surrendered, and now I want to give my entire life to sow and serve. That's who I am. The last area is our lives. Where are we sowing our lives? I'm almost done. Where are we sowing our lives? My wife and I were talking yesterday as we were getting ready for the wedding. And she said, you know, there's one thought that's always kind of messed with me. She's like, your mom's body in the ground. I was like, yeah, that is interesting. I've often thought about that too. And many of you with lost loved ones, you're like, you know, there's the process of that, and you know, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We came from that, we'll return to that. And I understand all that. But you know, that really represents something symbolic, in my opinion. I believe God had us return to the ground because we are a seed being planted, and what legacy are we leaving? Your life will one day, unless God returns first, your life will one day end in the ground.
Yes.
Or to ashes. Either way, it will return to the earth. What legacy are you leaving? What have you sown? What are you sowing now for a legacy that when your body's planted in the ground, what will your tombstone say? This is not a fear message. This is not to push you to give or sow your time or whatever. It's just really a great question. What are we doing? You know what? Why am I here? What legacy am I leaving? What am I thinking out 100 years? That was gross. I was trying to catch it before it leaked. I didn't get it. Not an educated man, but I've been with Jesus. Okay? I have snot in my nose too. Here's the deal. What our lives. We literally are sowing in our lives. And I just want you to stand with me. This is not to evoke emotion, or we're not going to take up an offering, and we already did that. But I believe God's taking up an offering right now. And He's taking up an offering still from last week, a life of surrender. When you surrender, you sow and you serve. Next week I'm very excited. I'm so excited to preach on serving. I'm so excited to preach on what does it look like when we capture this and our entire communities are changed. What does it look like that our entire families are changed? Our entire workplaces are changed. What would it look like to go into a workplace on revival and you look forward to going there every single day and being around every single person around you? What does it look like to actually root the people on around us? What's that look like? That's serving. That's loving your neighbor as yourself. But again, I just feel this call to surrender. I feel this call to just say, where am I going to sow? Where am I going to sow my words, my worship, my time, my treasure, my talent? Where am I going to sow my life? Because wherever you're surrendered, you're going to sow and serve. So where are we surrendered to? Are we really surrendered to Him, or are we surrendered to alcohol? Are we really surrendered to Him, or are we surrendered to a hobby? Are we really surrendered to Him, or are we surrendered to a career? And I'm just here to encourage you. When we surrender to Him, all that other stuff works out. It does. Why do I not have to preach on tithing all the time and tobacco and all these other natural things? Because when you capture it here, then you'll capture it here. And I'm more focused on here than I am here, because this always follows this. When you surrender and you sow, and your heart is turned to a sowing, a life of worship to God, all of a sudden, this all gets it. Now I want to give. Now I want to serve. Now I want to do. Now I want to be. Now I want to go. Right? It's all follows this though. So again, where are we surrendering? So put your hands on your hearts. We saw some healing today. That was cool. And I'm just going to pray for surrenders and sowing today. Sowing out of surrender.
Yeah.
That's where this focus is going to be. That we sow our time, treasure, talent, words, worship, and lives out of surrender. Right here. Surrender. One of the things that when I think of surrender, I think of this. What's a cop do when he's in really a lot of trouble and the guy's doing a lot of bad? Hands in the air. Yeah, do it. Yeah, hands in the air. I surrender. I give up. I give up. What's that look like? I believe it's fitting that when somebody's saying put your hands up and surrender, that our surrender is actually linked to our worship. I give up. God, I'm yours. So hands back on the heart. And God, we just thank you for the people here today. We thank you for your goodness, God. We thank you for your just wonderful works. We thank you for who you are, God. And we just pray, Lord, right now, that there will be surrendered hearts in this place. That the sowing and the serving will be birthed from surrender, God. We just pray right now, Lord, that every life in here will be touched and transformed and just encounter your presence, encounter your goodness, God, that through the week, through the nights, through dreams, through angelic visitations, through encounters, God, we will never be the same. That we will be with you, God. We may not be educated. We may not be pastors. We may not have a microphone on a podium, God, but we have been with you, and we see you greater than a prophet. We see you greater than a teacher. We see you as Messiah. We see you as Savior. We see you as Lord. We see you the King of Kings. And we surrender to you. We surrender our lives to you. We surrender our worship to you, God. We surrender our words to you. We surrender, God, our time, treasure, and talent to you, God, right now. It is yours. It is yours. Use us how you wish. We are yours. Our family is yours. Our finances are yours. Our marriage is yours, God. Our workplace, our career, it's yours, God. Our bank accounts, it's yours. Our home, it's yours, God. Our cars, our issues, our problems, my disease, my pain, my illness, my mental illness, God. My depression is yours. You are a healer. You're a deliverer. It's yours. It's all yours, God. It's all yours. We go from this place like David, men and women after your heart. We just turn our heart to you. We turn our affection to you. We worship you. We worship you.